Journey Thompson will not be at Herzog Elementary on Monday. A crisis team will be there to help classmates, teachers, and staff. She was killed near Soldan High School after a fight broke out following a football jamboree. The next day, city leaders announced $25,000 in reward money will be offered through the end of the month to motivate tipsters in any of the recent homicides of area children.
Can you imagine this? Meanwhile, sadly, crimes like this are routine in some of America's most liberal cities, the biggest cities. In St. Louis, 12 kids have died over the last 5 months. Buck Sexton's got this number. He's been focusing on this story. He's host of the Buck Sexton Show. Buck, all these kids are black. I have the number at 13. So far, St. Louis since 2015 is the highest murder rates of any major city in America. What's going on?
Well, overall violence in America has been dropping for a number of years, which is a great story. But there are these specific areas, they're generally Democrat-controlled urban areas, where you not only have a disparity with the decrease in crime in the rest of the country, you actually have crime rates even rising. St. Louis is one of them. Violent crime in St. Louis is up markedly over the last 10 years. New Orleans is another city. Chicago continues to be very high. Baltimore, I was in West Baltimore just a few weeks ago. These are cities that need real assistance and need new approaches to crime fighting. And there's just a political culture in place that refuses to shift, refuses to change tactics, and deal with some very tough questions about how do we protect all people, in this case, young children, from gunfire on the streets.
And they're trying to find who's doing this, and you wonder, are these kids caught in the crossfire, or some a series of sickos really targeting children? Obviously wouldn't hurt anybody. So I ask you, I'm not saying don't cover El Paso and Dayton. They're horrific, and we should never be numb to them. But why are we focusing more horrified by what's happening in Chicago and St. Louis? And people just want to say, well, it's gang violence. Really? 13 kids are dead, 134 homicides already this year, and we just got to say, oh, it's gang violence, they're just killing each other?
Well, this is why you see news stories about dozens of people sometimes being shot in one weekend in Chicago, and it has something that we've become numb to. People don't think about this as the crisis in some parts of Chicago that it is, and it's because of exactly what you brought up, which is the narrative that is at play here for mass shootings, where automatically you have a left that's very anti-gun, very anti-Second Amendment, and they see a mass shooting as an opportunity to push a gun control issue. But what's fascinating is they don't have the same focus on inner city crime, on crimes that affect predominantly minority communities, because it would raise issues like, why is Chicago, which is Democrat one-party rule, Baltimore, Democrat one-party rule, St. Louis, the same thing. Why are these areas where we haven't been able to see the huge crime drop that we've had, for example, here in New York City over the last 20 years?
Are we letting law enforcement do their job? Are we letting politics get into how they do their job? Have they watched so many careers crater because they feel as though they were doing their job and they get accused of not doing their job well? The Ferguson effect, the Pantaleo effect. With Eric Garner. Are we seeing some of that in this?
Well, absolutely. You talk to law enforcement, and I was an NYPD analyst in the intelligence division, and I'm still in contact with those guys. You speak to them, and the sense that you're not supported from the top down, that you could get jammed up in the politics. It's when you have to, as a law enforcement officer, make the tough call that you need to know the brass has your back. And in a lot of these cities, particularly these really troubled cities, Brian, they just don't, and they know that.
Buck Sexton, thanks so much.
Good to see you.